everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. Kind of had an interesting morning because I heard Taylor Swift's new album. Not typically what I do, but I almost kind of whiplashed when I heard her sing about covert narcissism. I was like, say what? And then on another track on this album, she's singing about Machiavellianism. I was like, oh, there's something here. So I listened to the song AntiHero again. A lot of the themes that she sings about, I was like, this is interesting. They're really congruent with the experience of survivors of narcissistic abuse. So I listened to it a few times. So I want to just share with y'all the pieces that jumped out at me. And I know she's a figure that makes all kinds of people have all kinds of opinions, but I'm just talking about the song here, right? So she says, I have this thing where I get older, but not wiser. And I heard that, and I thought, wow, that's really sort of the frustration of the trauma-bonded experience of making the same mistakes over and over again. She then talks about depression. She says, my depression works the graveyard shift. Again, very much that kind of enveloping experience, not just of depressed people, but survivors of these kinds of relationships. She talks about isolation. All of the people I've ghosted stand there in the room. She sings about the helplessness. She says, I should not be left to my own devices. I end up in crisis. She sings about the rumination and the re-experiencing that she has even while she's sleeping, waking up screaming while dreaming. She sings about the trauma-bonded anxiety about relationships ending because of attributing it to her anxious behavior in a relationship. She sings, I'll watch as you're leaving, you're tired of my scheming, one day I'll watch as you are leaving, life losing meaning, that kind of thing. She sings about social comparison. Everybody's sexy, I'm the monster. And she even sings about covert narcissism and this sort of the idea that anything she does that is charitable is interpreted as being manipulative and validation seeking, like a politician. Actually, what Ms. Swift seems to be talking about is communal narcissism, but I'm not going to split hairs. At least she brought it into music, right? There's even this idea that she's been branded a narcissist by so many people so that whatever she does, that's just how she's going to be viewed, right? Which is, again, the experience of some folks in these relationships as well. But this is what the part I was like, oh, interesting. She ends with this great fantasy scene, which I thought was fascinating. Her funeral after her own ungrateful adult children and daughter-in-law, who might have actually been the ones who took her out, but she leaves them nothing from her vast fortune. But I give her major bonus points that she leaves her beach house to her cats. But then there's this great line. She sings, she's laughing at us from hell. And I felt like this part of the song got at the sort of anticipatory sense when you're going through narcissistic abuse, that maybe these issues are just intergenerational and that we're not going to have it any better with our own children. But the most important line of all is the refrain that she sings over and over again. She sings, it's me, I'm the problem. And that right there is the mantra of every survivor of any destructive relationship. I also love that she kept using that refrain. She kept saying, tale as old as time. Well, first of all, because it is. And the Beauty and the Beast reference wasn't lost on me. I'm not sure if it was intended in that way by her, but that whole idea, Beauty and the Beast being a really destructive fairy tale, that if I love the beast enough, it will turn into a prince, right? Now, I don't know a lot about Ms. Swift. I'm a little bit older, so I don't know a lot about her story, but it's clear in the public sphere, her story has actually been quite complicated. Clearly, she's been around the block with narcissism. She sings about it in multiple songs and albums. She sings about it in her song, I Did Something Bad. She sings, I never trust a narcissist, but they love me, because for every lie I tell them, they tell me 3. This is how the world works. I never trust a playboy, but they love me. I mean, girlfriend should actually be running this damn YouTube channel because clearly she's got the stories. But in the public arena, she has been subjected to the behavior over, and I've read this in journalistic reports of multiple men who have evidenced narcissistic behaviors like entitlement, vindictiveness, manipulation, gaslighting, and bullying. And all of this happened to her, and she's a pretty young woman. And all of that, interestingly, or unfortunately, appeared to unleash a torrent of public polarization, with some people vehemently supporting her and others vehemently villainizing her. I gotta say, it felt like a lot for someone as young as her to manage. And I'm not a big fan of people out there who say, well, she asked for it by becoming a famous person. Nobody asks to be abused. And the opinion of the public that it can be open season on a person, especially a very young woman, just because they're well known, actually only emboldens the people who abuse people in ordinary individual relationships. Once we normalize abuse, which is literally all the internet is abuse, once we normalize it in the public sphere, we give permission to it to occur in private. But if a person is in the midst of a polarized storm, love and hate, like she is, that definitely is like living in a trauma bond come to life. And even reflecting on her own possible narcissism, when she's thinking about, well, maybe I'm the covert narcissist. Listen, if enough people call you something, you start to believe it. That's how gaslighting works. And that any behavior, good or bad, is distorted into what people want it to be. I really don't know what this woman's private life has been like, but it's clear that somewhere in her life, someone did love bomb her, devalue and discard her. She sings about it in a way that feels very personal. Listen, it doesn't matter how famous you are. It doesn't matter how beautiful you are. It doesn't matter how talented you are. Being in a relationship where that happens still breaks us. Celebrities at her sort of superstardom level, a level of fame that makes normal life all but impossible, really sort of become giant Rorschach ink blots. Those ink blots that we project our stories onto, our fears, our fantasies, our hopes, and our envies. When people talk about her, they're actually talking about themselves because none of us really know her. I frankly don't know what her goal was in this song. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know her. All I know is that the themes she brings up in this song, trauma bonds, helplessness, depression, rumination, social comparison, gaslighting, feeling that your identity is being dictated by other people, and most pointedly, the self-blame and the self-shame. It's me, I'm the problem. These are wounds that far too many people in the world are carrying around now. And she's singing about them. I'd assume they've happened to her. In the world I work in, these patterns are often the fallout of toxic relationships, legacy relationships, or a new one. And for a celebrity, their toxic relationship may not always be with an individual person in their life, but it could be. Their relationships could also just be with the world at large and how the world treats them. Maybe Ms. Swift's song lets all survivors, whether of emotional abuse, narcissistic abuse, or any number of mental health challenges, it's that none of us, it's a reminder that none of us are struggling with this alone. And no amount of money or fame can protect any of us. So I got to say, I see that this song has blown up in the public sphere. And then I heard covert narcissism. I was like, oh. And while she's really singing about communal narcissism, the fact is, I'm beginning to see that this languaging is really building into the public sphere. And like I said, doesn't matter how big or small we are, how well known we are or not. When these things happen to us in the public or in our individual relationships, they break us. Some people turn that into our art. I hope that she kills it with this album. Thanks again.